Alicia Bailey stands frozen as champagne drips down her designer suit, the entire first-class cabin silent. The black man she just berated stares at her calmly, holding out his business card, Elijah Washington, CEO, Horizon Airlines. Behind him, flight attendants exchange knowing glances as realization dawns on her face. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about unexpected encounters that change lives forever. Now let's find out how Alicia ended up in this humiliating situation, and what happens when assumptions clash with reality at 30,000 feet. Alicia Bailey considered herself one of the good ones. At 42, the white marketing executive prided herself on her progressive politics, her diverse friend group, mostly colleagues from work functions, and her general awareness of social issues. She donated annually to causes supporting underprivileged communities and had even attended a Black Lives Matter rally once, though she'd left early due to a dinner reservation. This Tuesday morning had been nothing short of disastrous. Her alarm failed to go off, leaving her just 90 minutes to make her flight from Atlanta to San Francisco. The quarterly marketing presentation she was scheduled to deliver to the board tomorrow contained revisions she'd finished at 3 in the morning, and her usual car service had cancelled last minute. Come on, Alicia muttered, tapping her manicured fingernails against the Uber's door handle as they sat in gridlocked traffic. The driver, a middle-aged black man who had introduced himself as Gerald, met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "We'll get you there, ma'am. Airport's just 2 miles ahead. I'm in first class. They won't wait for me if I'm late," she said, checking her watch again. "Can't you take a different route?" Gerald politely explained that all alternate routes were equally congested due to an earlier accident. Alicia sighed dramatically, making sure her displeasure was known. When they finally arrived at the terminal, she grabbed her Louis Vuitton luggage without a word of thanks, leaving a 3-star rating as she rushed toward the check-in counter. The line for security stretched longer than she'd ever seen it. Alicia marched directly to the priority lane, waving her platinum frequent flyer card at the TSA agent who barely glanced at it before waving her through. Even so, she was forced to remove her laptop, take off her shoes, and endure the standard security procedures that always seemed to take forever when she was running late. By the time she reached gate A23, the final boarding call for Flight 2467 to San Francisco was being announced. She rushed forward, bypassing the economy line and heading straight for the priority boarding lane. "First class," she announced breathlessly to the gate agent, a young black woman whose name tag read Jasmine. Jasmine nodded politely. "Cutting it close today, Ms. Bailey. You're the last first-class passenger to board." "Traffic was impossible," Alicia replied, not hiding her annoyance as she strode down the jet bridge, already mentally settling into her preferred seat, 3A, window, left side. She always booked the same seat on this route, enjoying both the privacy of the window and the superior morning light for reading her briefing documents. Entering the aircraft, Alicia nodded curtly to the flight attendants greeting passengers. She made her way to the first-class cabin, counting rows until she reached row 3. Her stride faltered. A black man in a tailored navy suit was sitting in her window seat, tapping on a tablet. Alicia checked her boarding pass. Yes, 3A, definitely her seat. The man appeared to be in his mid-40s, with closely cropped hair and a solid build. Without looking at his boarding pass, she immediately assumed he must be in the wrong place. "Excuse me," she said, her tone already condescending. "I believe you're in my seat." "I'm 3A. The man looked up, his expression neutral. He had deep brown eyes that revealed nothing as he reached for his boarding pass in his jacket pocket. "I'm also in 3A, he replied, his voice deep and measured as he showed her his boarding pass. Alicia barely glanced at it. "There must be a mistake. I always sit in 3A on this flight. I'm a Platinum Medallion member." "So am I," the man said simply, returning to his tablet. Alicia's face flushed. She raised her hand, signaling to a passing flight attendant. "Excuse me, we have a seating issue here." The flight attendant, a black woman whose name tag read Tasha Reynolds, approached with a professional smile. "How can I help?" "This gentleman is in my seat," Alicia insisted, thrusting her boarding pass forward. "I'm supposed to be in 3A. Tasha looked at both boarding passes carefully. "Ms. Bailey, it appears there's been a change in your seat assignment. You're actually in 3B, the aisle seat." "That's not possible. I specifically booked 3A. I always sit in 3A. "I understand your preference," Tasha replied patiently, "but according to our system, Mr. Washington is assigned to 3A for this flight, and you're in 3B. Both are excellent first-class seats." Alicia felt her chest tighten with indignation. She looked from Tasha to the man, Mr. Washington, who had returned to his work without comment, as if the interaction was already over. "This is ridiculous," Alicia muttered, loud enough to be heard. "I don't understand how this could happen." Several other first-class passengers were watching the interaction now, some with discomfort, others with barely concealed interest in the drama unfolding. "Would you like me to check if there's another window seat available in first class?" Tasha offered. Alicia glanced around the cabin. Every other seat was filled. "No, fine. Whatever." She slid her designer bag into the overhead compartment with more force than necessary and took her seat in 3B, making a point to leave as much space as possible between herself and Mr. Washington. As she settled in, she kept her body angled away from him, taking out her phone and making a show of sending important emails before takeoff. She placed her purse between them on the shared armrest, effectively creating a barrier. When he reached for the air vent above his seat, she instinctively pulled back, clutching her belongings closer. "Can I get you a pre-departure beverage, Ms. Bailey?" Tasha asked, returning to their row. "Sparkling water with lime," Alicia replied curtly, not making eye contact. "And for you, Mr. Washington?" "Just water is fine, thank you, Tasha," he answered, with a warmth in his tone that Alicia noted with irritation. He knew the flight attendant's name without looking at her name tag. A frequent flyer, then, but clearly not frequent enough to understand the unspoken rule that Platinum members had certain expectations about their preferred seating. Alicia took a long sip of her sparkling water when it arrived and mentally prepared for what would clearly be an uncomfortable 5-hour flight. The boarding process continued around them as Alicia pointedly tapped away at her phone, making sure anyone watching could tell she was handling important business matters. She spoke loudly into her phone, emphasizing key phrases. "Yes, I'll be presenting directly to the board tomorrow. The entire quarterly strategy depends on it," she said to her assistant, her voice carrying just enough to reach nearby seats. "Make sure the conference room is set up exactly as I specified. The San Francisco team knows I don't tolerate last-minute changes." From her peripheral vision, she noticed Mr. Washington hadn't glanced up once from his tablet. This somehow annoyed her even more. She ended her call just as a white male flight attendant approached their row. "Good morning, Mr. Washington," he said with a genuine smile. His name tag read Devin Parker. "Great to see you again. Is there anything special you need for this flight?" "I'm all set, Devin, thank you," Elijah replied, returning the smile. Devin nodded respectfully before turning to Alicia. "And for you, ma'am? Anything you need before takeoff?" "I'd like a blanket," Alicia said, watching the interaction with growing frustration. She'd been on this route at least 20 times in the past year, and not once had a flight attendant greeted her by name without checking her boarding pass first. As Devin moved away to fetch her blanket, Alicia shifted in her seat, trying to glimpse what was so important on Mr. Washington's tablet. She caught sight of what appeared to be complex spreadsheets and a document with Horizon Airlines letterhead, but the content wasn't clear from her angle. Probably some mid-level report, she decided. Perhaps he worked in operations or accounting. The cabin door closed, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Michael Reynolds speaking. On behalf of Horizon Airlines, I'd like to welcome you aboard Flight 2467 to San Francisco. Our flight time today will be approximately 5 hours and 10 minutes. We're expecting clear skies for most of our journey, with a small patch of turbulence as we cross the Rockies. We're currently third in line for takeoff, so we should be in the air shortly. The safety demonstration began as Alicia half listened, having seen it countless times before. She noticed that several flight attendants, including Tasha and Devon, seemed to make eye contact with Mr. Washington during various points of the presentation, subtle nods of acknowledgement that struck her as unusual. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Devon returned with Alicia's blanket and a fresh glass of water for Mr. Washington, who hadn't requested one. "Just wanted to make sure you're hydrated before takeoff, sir," Devon said. "I appreciate that, Devon," Elijah replied. Alicia wrapped the blanket around herself, watching this exchange with growing suspicion. She had a theory forming. The special treatment, the familiarity with the crew, the automatic deference. She'd seen it before with certain types of passengers. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the air. Once they reached cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign dinged off, the first-class drink service began. Devon approached their row first. "Mr. Washington, your usual Talisker neat?" "Perfect, thank you," Elijah confirmed. "And for you, ma'am?" Devon turned to Alicia. "Champagne," she said, eyeing Mr. Washington's premium scotch. "So, are you an athlete or in entertainment?" she asked him directly as Devon moved away to prepare their drinks. Elijah looked up from his tablet, mild surprise registering on his face. "Neither," he replied simply. "Oh," Alicia said, undeterred. "I just noticed the crew seems to know you well. Most people don't get that kind of recognition unless they're, someone. I fly this route frequently," he offered, his tone neutral but not inviting further conversation. Devon returned with their drinks. Alicia noticed her champagne was served in a standard first-class flute, while Mr. Washington's scotch came in what appeared to be a crystal tumbler she'd never seen used on board before. "We have a selection of breakfast options this morning," Devon announced. "French toast with caramelized bananas, veggie frittata, or the protein plate with Greek yogurt and berries." "I'll have the protein plate," Alicia said. Devon nodded, then turned to Elijah. "Chef Marcus prepared something special for you, Mr. Washington. Will that be suitable?" "That sounds excellent. Please thank him for me," Elijah replied. Alicia took a long sip of her champagne, irritation building. Special meal preparations. Crystal glassware. She'd spent over $50,000 on Horizon flights last year alone and had never been offered anything beyond the standard first-class menu. "You must be a very frequent flyer," she pressed, unable to contain her curiosity and annoyance. "You could say that," he replied, returning to the document on his tablet. Alicia studied him more carefully now. His suit was bespoke, she could tell from the perfect fit. His watch was a subtle but expensive Patek Philippe. He wore no visible jewelry besides the watch and a simple wedding band. Nothing flashy or ostentatious that would mark him as newly wealthy. Old money, perhaps. Or corporate success. The mystery irritated her almost as much as losing her window seat. She took another drink of champagne and decided she would simply have to endure this flight. Opening her purse, she located her sleeping pill, deciding that unconsciousness was preferable to sitting in the wrong seat next to this inexplicably privileged man. She swallowed the pill with the last of her champagne and reclined her seat slightly, hoping to sleep through at least half the journey. As she closed her eyes, she heard Devon speaking quietly to Mr. Washington about some operational matter concerning the airline, but the pill was already taking effect, and she drifted into an uneasy sleep, her last conscious thought being a vague suspicion that perhaps Mr. Washington wasn't just any ordinary passenger after all. A sudden jolt woke Alicia 2 hours later. Her neck was stiff, and as she blinked away her medication-induced grogginess, she realized her tray table had been lowered with a half-finished meal in front of her. She had no memory of being served or eating anything. More alarmingly, her glass of water had tipped over, spilling onto the important presentation documents she'd placed on her tray. No, 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 she gasped, grabbing napkins to blot the spreading moisture. Several pages were already ruined, the ink bleeding across her carefully prepared charts. Without thinking, she turned to Mr. Washington, who was reviewing what appeared to be financial statements. "Did you bump my tray?" she demanded. He looked up, genuinely confused. "Excuse me?" "My water spilled all over my documents," she said accusingly. "Someone must have bumped my tray while I was asleep." The plane shuddered again, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unexpected turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants, please suspend service and secure the cabin." Elijah gestured toward the window where dark clouds were visible. "I believe the turbulence might be the culprit," he said calmly, securing his own seatbelt. "Convenient," Alicia muttered, loud enough for him to hear. The sleeping pill had left her with a dry mouth and a short temper. 2 hours of smooth flying and suddenly there's turbulence right when my documents get ruined. Several heads turned in their direction as Alicia's voice rose. A middle-aged white woman across the aisle raised her eyebrows. An Asian businessman in the row ahead turned slightly in his seat. Even in first class, public confrontations were uncommon and generally considered poor form. "I'm sorry about your documents," Elijah said evenly. "Would you like me to ask for more napkins?" "I'd like you to be more careful," Alicia snapped, knowing even as the words left her mouth that she was being unreasonable. But the combination of the lost window seat, the preferential treatment he'd received, the sleeping pill hangover, and now her ruined presentation was too much. "Some of us are trying to get actual work done." The plane lurched again, more violently this time. Tasha hurried down the aisle, checking that all passengers were seated with seatbelts fastened. "Everything all right here?" she asked, noticing Alicia's wet documents and her obvious distress. "My water spilled during the turbulence," Alicia said, her tone implying it was somehow the airline's fault. "My presentation for tomorrow is ruined." "I'm so sorry, Ms. Bailey." "Let me get you some more napkins and a fresh water," Tasha offered. "What I need is a working printer and fresh copies," Alicia replied. "This is unacceptable. These seats are too cramped. In all my years flying first class, I've never had this problem in my usual seat." Elijah shifted slightly in his seat but remained silent, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience," Tasha said professionally. "Unfortunately, we don't have printing capabilities on board, but I can provide additional napkins and perhaps some plastic bags to protect the documents from further damage." "These people," Alicia muttered under her breath as Tasha moved away to fetch supplies. "No understanding of business needs or proper customer service." Elijah's head turned sharply at this comment, his eyes narrowing slightly, but he still said nothing. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "This is Captain Reynolds. We'll be experiencing intermittent turbulence for the next 30 minutes as we navigate around a storm system. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants will resume service once we're clear of the turbulence." Alicia recognized the name, Reynolds, the same as Tasha's. She made the connection immediately and scoffed audibly. "Nepotism," she said, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "That explains the service quality." Elijah finally broke his silence. "Ms. Bailey," he said, his voice low but firm. "I understand you're upset about your documents, but that comment was unnecessary and inappropriate." "Excuse me?" Alicia said, genuinely shocked that he would address her directly. "I don't recall asking for your opinion on what's appropriate. When you make disparaging remarks about the crew loudly enough for everyone to hear, you make it everyone's business," he replied calmly. Tasha returned with fresh napkins, a plastic bag, and a bottle of water. If she had heard Alicia's comment, she gave no indication, maintaining her professional demeanor. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" she asked. "Yes," Alicia said, seeing an opportunity to assert her status. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor. The service on this flight has been subpar, and now my business materials are ruined. Tasha nodded politely. I'll have our lead flight attendant come speak with you. As she walked away, several other passengers were now openly watching the drama unfold. Alicia felt a flush of embarrassment but doubled down, turning to Elijah. And I'd appreciate it if you kept your opinions to yourself for the remainder of this flight. As you wish, he replied, returning to his work. Minutes later, an Asian woman in her 50s approached their row. Her name tag identified her as Rebecca Chen, senior flight attendant. Ms. Bailey, I understand you're having some issues with our service today, she said professionally. How can I help? Before Alicia could respond, Rebecca noticed Elijah and her demeanor subtly shifted. Mr. Washington, I didn't realize you were on this flight. Is everything satisfactory for you as well? Everything's fine, Rebecca. Thank you for asking, he replied with a small smile. Alicia watched this interaction with growing frustration. Are you kidding me right now? She said. I'm the one who asked to speak with you. Of course, Ms. Bailey. I apologize, Rebecca said, returning her attention to Alicia. Please tell me what's happening. First, my seat was reassigned without notice. Then my documents were ruined due to turbulence and possibly my seatmate's carelessness. And throughout this flight, I've noticed a clear pattern of preferential treatment towards certain passengers, she said, with a pointed look at Elijah. I understand your frustration about the seat change and the damaged documents. Unfortunately, seat assignments can sometimes be modified for operational reasons. As for the spill, that was clearly caused by turbulence, which is beyond our control. Is there anything specific about our service that has disappointed you? Before Alicia could answer, Elijah politely excused himself to use the restroom, sliding past her with minimal contact. Once he was out of earshot, Alicia leaned toward Rebecca. What's his deal anyway? She asked in a hushed voice. Everyone on this plane is treating him like royalty. Rebecca's expression remained neutral. Mr. Washington is a valued Horizon customer. We try to provide excellent service to all our first-class passengers. Right, Alicia said skeptically. I've been a Platinum Medallion member for 3 years, and I've never seen crystal glassware or special meals prepared by Chef Marcus. I apologize if you feel your experience has been inconsistent with your status, Rebecca replied diplomatically. Is there something specific I can do to improve your flight today? Alicia sighed in exasperation. Just get me some more napkins for these documents and maybe have your flight attendants pay as much attention to all first-class passengers as they do to my seatmate. Rebecca nodded. I'll personally ensure you receive attentive service for the remainder of the flight. And again, I apologize for any inconsistency you've experienced. As Rebecca walked away, Alicia turned to the older white man seated across the aisle, James Wilson, seeking validation. Can you believe this treatment? She said, assuming he would sympathize with her frustration. To her surprise, James looked distinctly uncomfortable. Actually, he said quietly, leaning closer so others wouldn't hear, I think you might want to be careful about how you're approaching this situation. What do you mean? Alicia asked, taken aback. That gentleman you've been speaking to, James said, nodding toward Elijah's empty seat. Do you know who he is? Obviously someone important to this airline, Alicia replied sarcastically. A celebrity or major shareholder, I'm guessing. James Wilson's expression remained serious. Ms. Bailey, I believe you're making a grave error in judgment. I happen to work for Horizon Airline's board of directors. Alicia's eyes widened. Oh, she said, suddenly interested in cultivating this potential connection. I didn't realize. That man, James continued, lowering his voice further, is not just important to this airline. He's... But before he could finish, Elijah returned to his seat, and James immediately straightened in his chair, nodding respectfully to Elijah before returning to his magazine. Alicia was left wondering exactly what James had been about to reveal as the flight continued through patches of turbulence, her ruined documents forgotten as she pondered the mystery of her seatmate. What do you think is going on here? Comment number 1 if you think Alicia is overreacting, or number 2 if you believe she's justified in her complaints about the service. Like and subscribe to see what happens next in this first-class confrontation. Has anyone ever treated you differently because of assumptions they made about you? The truth about Elijah is about to start coming out, and Alicia won't be prepared for what she discovers. As the turbulence subsided, the cabin crew prepared for meal service. Alicia sat in uncomfortable silence, James Wilson's unfinished warning replaying in her mind. She stole glances at Elijah, who had returned to reviewing documents, seemingly unbothered by the earlier confrontation. When she caught James looking in their direction again, she raised her eyebrows questioningly, but he merely shook his head slightly and returned to his magazine. Whatever he had been about to tell her, he wasn't going to elaborate with Elijah present. Devon approached their row, this time pushing a cart with covered plates. "Mr. Washington," he said, "Chef Marcus prepared the seared salmon with quinoa and asparagus you enjoyed last month, with those adjustments you suggested." "That sounds perfect, Devon. Please convey my thanks," Elijah replied as a steaming plate was placed before him. The aroma was mouth-watering, and Alicia noticed it looked nothing like the standard first-class fare. "Ms. Bailey," Devon continued, "you pre-ordered the vegetarian pasta?" "Yes," Alicia confirmed, watching as he placed her meal on her tray. Immediately she noticed the pasta was overcooked, and there was cheese sprinkled on top despite her clear note requesting no dairy due to her lactose intolerance. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "I specifically requested no cheese. I'm lactose intolerant. It's in my passenger profile and was noted on my meal request." Devon looked genuinely apologetic. "I'm very sorry, Ms. Bailey. Let me take that back and see if we have any alternatives available." "This is exactly what I was talking about," Alicia said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Special custom meals for some passengers while others can't even get their basic dietary requirements met correctly." Several passengers glanced over, some with disapproval evident on their faces. An older black couple exchanged looks of recognition, as if they'd witnessed this type of behavior before. "Ms. Bailey," Elijah said quietly, "I'm sure they'll correct the mistake. There's no need to escalate the situation." "Of course you'd say that," Alicia snapped. "You got exactly what you wanted, prepared specially by Chef Marcus himself." Elijah put down his fork and turned to face her directly for the first time. "Is there a particular reason you seem to have an issue with me receiving good service?" The directness of his question caught Alicia off guard. "I have an issue with inconsistent service," she replied defensively. "I spend thousands of dollars on this airline annually, and I've never once had a special meal prepared, been greeted by name without checking my boarding pass, or been served drinks in crystal glassware." Devon returned at that moment with a tablet in hand. "Ms. Bailey, I wanted to sincerely apologize for the meal mix-up. We do have a dairy-free pasta option available, but it will take about 15 minutes to prepare. In the meantime, I thought you might be interested in this." He handed her the tablet, open to what appeared to be a web page. "This might help explain some of the service differences you've noticed." Alicia took the tablet and looked at the screen. It displayed Horizon Airlines' executive web page. There, prominently featured at the top of the leadership team, was a professional photo of Elijah Washington with the title, Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Her mouth fell open as she stared at the image, then at Elijah in person, then back at the tablet. The biography listed his credentials: MBA from Harvard, former consultant at McKinsey, founder of Washington Capital Partners, which had acquired the struggling Horizon Airlines 7 years ago and transformed it into one of the most successful regional carriers in the country. I don't understand," Alicia stammered, her face flushing with embarrassment. "You're the CEO of Horizon Airlines?" "Founder and CEO, yes," Elijah confirmed calmly. "But why are you flying commercial? Don't you have a private jet or something?" The question tumbled out before she could stop herself. "I fly our commercial routes regularly," he explained. "It helps me understand the customer experience firsthand and identify areas for improvement." Alicia handed the tablet back to Devon, her mind racing. She had spent the past 3 hours antagonizing the CEO of the airline she was currently flying on, the airline she frequently used for all her business travel. The implications were just beginning to sink in. "I had no idea," she said, attempting damage control. "I apologize if I seemed frustrated earlier." "Apology accepted," Elijah said simply, returning to his meal. Devon left with a promise to return soon with her corrected meal. Alicia sat in mortified silence, processing this revelation. She glanced around the cabin and realized many of the other passengers were watching her with expressions ranging from amusement to second-hand embarrassment. Had they all known who he was except her? Attempting to salvage the situation, Alicia tried a different approach. "So, Mr. Washington, have you been with Horizon long?" she asked, her tone suddenly friendly and conversational. "Since the beginning," he replied. "I founded it 7 years ago." "That's impressive," she said with forced enthusiasm. "I actually live in Oakwood Heights now. It's such a lovely area." Something flickered in Elijah's expression. "Oakwood Heights? That's where I grew up, actually." "Really?" Alicia said, genuinely surprised. Oakwood Heights had been a predominantly black neighborhood that had undergone significant gentrification in recent years. Property values had tripled as wealthy white professionals moved in, renovating historic homes and opening trendy businesses. Alicia had purchased her Victorian townhouse there 2 years ago and was active in the neighborhood association that pushed for improvements to the area. "My parents still live there," Elijah continued. "They've owned their house on Maple Street for 40 years. Alicia felt a twinge of discomfort as she recalled conversations with friends about improving the neighborhood and bringing civilization to what they had called a developing area. She had even complained at association meetings about some of the longtime residents' resistance to the changes being implemented. "It's changed a lot recently," she offered cautiously. "Yes, it has," Elijah agreed, his tone neutral but his eyes watching her carefully. Before the conversation could continue, the plane lurched violently. Overhead compartments burst open, and oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling panels. Alicia gasped as her remaining water spilled across her lap. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," came Captain Reynolds' voice, tension evident despite his professional tone. "We've encountered severe turbulence. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened and oxygen masks on if they've deployed in your section. Flight attendants, secure the cabin immediately." Screams and gasps filled the cabin as the plane dropped several hundred feet in seconds. Alicia gripped her armrests, her knuckles white, all thoughts of her damaged documents and Elijah's identity momentarily forgotten. Across the aisle, an elderly black woman was struggling to reach her oxygen mask. Without hesitation, Elijah unfastened his seatbelt, steadied himself against the violent shaking of the aircraft, and helped secure the woman's mask before returning to his seat. "Are you all right?" he asked Alicia, who was visibly shaken. She nodded mutely, too frightened to speak. The captain's voice returned, "Crew, prepare for immediate descent. We're diverting to Denver International due to a mechanical issue that requires immediate attention." Tasha moved through the cabin efficiently, checking on passengers while maintaining her balance in the shuddering aircraft. When she reached their row, she leaned down to speak directly to Elijah. "Mr. Washington, Captain Reynolds requested I inform you that we're experiencing a hydraulic system failure in the left wing. The situation is under control, but protocol requires an immediate landing at the nearest suitable airport." "Thank you, Tasha. Keep me updated," he replied with the calm authority of someone accustomed to handling crises. As Tasha moved away, the plane began a controlled but steep descent. Alicia's ears popped painfully with the rapid change in altitude. Emergency lights illuminated the aisles, and flight attendants demonstrated brace positions. "This can't be happening," Alicia whispered, her earlier arrogance replaced by naked fear. "It's going to be all right," Elijah assured her. "Our pilots are excellently trained for these situations, and Denver has one of the best emergency response teams in the country." A phone rang at the front of the first-class cabin. Devon answered it, then made his way to Elijah. "Mr. Washington, ground operations in Denver is on the line. They're asking for your instructions regarding passenger accommodations and alternative flight arrangements. Tell them to prepare the executive conference room for a briefing upon landing, and have the entire Denver ground team ready for my arrival. I want all passengers taken care of immediately, with priority rebooking and accommodations as needed." "Yes, sir." They also mentioned that the maintenance team is standing by and that the Phoenix backup aircraft is being prepared in case we need to deploy it. As Devon returned to relay these instructions, Alicia stared at Elijah with new understanding. This wasn't just any CEO making a routine flight inspection. The level of operational control he maintained, the immediate deference from all staff, the way critical decisions awaited his input, it all pointed to something more significant than she had initially realized. "You don't just run this airline, do you?" she asked quietly as the plane continued its emergency descent. "You own it. Completely." Elijah met her gaze steadily. "Yes, Ms. Bailey. I own Horizon Airlines. Every plane, every route, every seat, including the one you're sitting in right now." The aircraft touched down hard on the Denver runway, emergency vehicles with flashing lights lining their path, and Alicia Bailey finally understood the magnitude of her misjudgment. The landing was rough but controlled, the pilot bringing the massive aircraft to a halt with practiced precision. Emergency vehicles surrounded them immediately, their flashing lights casting red and blue patterns through the windows. The cabin erupted in nervous applause and sighs of relief. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Reynolds announced, "we have safely landed at Denver International Airport. Please remain seated until we reach the gate. Emergency personnel are inspecting the aircraft as a precautionary measure, but there is no immediate danger." Alicia's heart was still racing. She turned to Elijah, who was already on his phone, speaking in a low, authoritative voice. "Yes, I want full mechanical diagnostics immediately. Passenger safety is our absolute priority. Have hotels secured within a 10-mile radius. First class and business passengers at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, economy at the Westin or equivalent. I want transportation arranged for everyone, not just vouchers." As he continued giving directives, Alicia watched him with new eyes. His composure during the emergency, the immediate response from the ground team, the way he prioritized passenger needs even before the plane had reached the gate, it was leadership in action, not the entitlement she had initially perceived. When he ended his call, she seized the opportunity to repair some of the damage she'd caused. "That was impressive," she said, her tone deliberately warm. "The way you handled everything. You must have been in situations like this before." Elijah slipped his phone into his jacket pocket. "Unfortunately, yes. Mechanical issues are rare, but they happen. The key is having protocols in place that prioritize safety while minimizing disruption." "Well, I'm grateful for your expertise," Alicia continued, laying the charm on thick. "I can see why everyone on this flight defers to your judgment." A slight smile played at the corner of Elijah's mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Bailey, I appreciate the sentiment, but this sudden change in your demeanor is unnecessary." "I don't know what you mean," she said, feigning confusion. "An hour ago, you were accusing me of receiving preferential treatment and disrupting your flight. Now that you know my position, you're attempting to ingratiate yourself. Neither approach is necessary." Alicia flushed with embarrassment but persisted. "I just think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to start over. I'm actually very interested in aviation and business leadership. Perhaps we could continue our conversation once we're off the plane. I'd love to hear more about your journey." Before Elijah could respond, the aircraft began moving again, slowly approaching the gate. Captain Reynolds made another announcement: "We've been cleared to proceed to the gate. Once there, we'll deplane in an orderly fashion. Horizon representatives will be waiting to assist with your connecting flights and accommodations." As they taxied forward, Alicia tried another angle. "I noticed you mentioned growing up in Oakwood Heights. That's such a coincidence since I live there now." Which part did you say your parents were in? Maple Street, Elijah replied, his tone neutral. They've lived in the same house since before I was born. Oh, that's the historic district now. Those beautiful old Victorians. I'm just a few blocks away on Elmwood. It's become such a vibrant community recently. Elijah's expression remained unreadable. It was always vibrant. Just in different ways. Of course, Alicia backpedaled. I just meant with all the new restaurants and shops. The area has really developed. You mean gentrified, Elijah stated plainly. Alicia swallowed uncomfortably. Well, I suppose some would call it that. But property values have increased, which is good for everyone, right? Is it? Elijah asked. My parents have seen their property taxes triple in 5 years. Many of their neighbors, people who lived there for generations, have been forced to sell and move further out because they can't afford to stay. The soul of the neighborhood has been systematically extracted and replaced with artisanal coffee shops and yoga studios. Alicia remembered her neighborhood association meetings where they had strategized ways to encourage certain businesses to relocate and cheered when long-standing community establishments closed to make way for upscale boutiques. She had personally voted against renewal of permits for a local jazz club that had operated for 50 years, complaining about the noise and the element it attracted. I hadn't thought about it that way, she admitted, though her tone suggested otherwise. The plane came to a complete stop at the gate, and the seatbelt sign dinged off. Immediately, Elijah's phone rang again. He answered briefly, then stood as the cabin door opened. If you'll excuse me, he said to Alicia, I need to address the situation. As he moved toward the front of the cabin, Devon approached him. Mr. Washington, the executive team is assembled in the conference room as requested. Maintenance reports the hydraulic issue is reparable but will require at least 8 hours. Thank you, Devon. Please ensure all passengers are personally assisted with their connections and accommodations. Alicia watched as Elijah exited the aircraft first, greeted by a line of uniformed Horizon employees who had been waiting for his arrival. Through the windows, she could see more staff assembled on the jet bridge, tablets in hand, clearly awaiting instructions. She gathered her belongings, including her damp documents, and followed the other first-class passengers off the plane. In the terminal, the scene was one of efficient organization. Horizon employees were stationed at multiple podiums, directing passengers to various service points based on their needs. As Alicia approached one of the desks, she spotted Elijah at the center of a group of executives, reviewing information on multiple screens. One man in particular seemed to be deferring to him extensively, a tall, distinguished-looking white man in his 60s. Name, please, asked the agent at the desk. Alicia Bailey, first class, she replied, emphasizing her cabin status. The agent tapped at her keyboard. Ms. Bailey, we've arranged accommodations for you at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. A car will be waiting to transport you once you've received your luggage. We anticipate having you on a flight to San Francisco tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you, Alicia said, impressed with the efficiency. Could you tell me who that man is? She asked, gesturing toward the older white executive speaking with Elijah. That's Mr. Gregory Patterson, our chief operating officer, the agent replied. Alicia nodded, watching the interaction with interest. Even from a distance, it was clear that Patterson, despite his senior position and age, was deferring completely to Elijah's judgment. She overheard fragments of their conversation as they moved closer to where she stood. Unacceptable solution, Greg, Elijah was saying firmly. Putting economy passengers on standby for tomorrow's flights while guaranteeing seats only for premium classes. That's not how we operate. But the logistics of rebooking everyone immediately. Patterson began. Then solve the logistics, Elijah cut in. Charter additional aircraft if necessary. Every passenger gets rebooked with confirmed seats before they leave this terminal. Period. Patterson nodded, immediately turning to relay these instructions to his team. Alicia noted the stark contrast between the Elijah she had encountered on the plane, quiet, restrained, almost accommodating, and this version, commanding, uncompromising, and clearly accustomed to having his directives followed without question. A younger executive approached with a presentation displayed on a tablet. "Mr. Washington, these are the alternative flight options we've identified. The Phoenix aircraft can be here in 3 hours, but it would mean canceling tomorrow morning's Phoenix-Chicago route." Elijah studied the data briefly before shaking his head. "Unacceptable. We don't solve one disruption by creating another. What about the maintenance backup in Salt Lake?" The presentations continued, with Elijah quickly assessing options and making decisions that balanced operational constraints with passenger needs. Alicia couldn't help but be impressed by his command of details and the respect he clearly commanded from everyone around him. As passengers began moving toward the baggage claim area, Alicia lingered, hoping for another chance to speak with Elijah. Her opportunity came when he stepped away from his team to take a phone call. She approached him as he ended the call. "Mr. Washington," she began, "I just wanted to thank you for ensuring we're all taken care of so efficiently." Elijah nodded politely. "It's our responsibility, Ms. Bailey." "I was wondering if I could speak with you privately for a moment," she asked. After a brief hesitation, he gestured toward a quiet corner of the terminal. "I have a few minutes." Once they were relatively alone, Alicia adopted her most contrite expression. "I want to sincerely apologize for my behavior on the flight. I had no idea who you were, and I was stressed about my presentation tomorrow." "Ms. Bailey," Elijah said evenly, "I want to be clear about something. The issue wasn't that you didn't recognize me as the CEO. The issue was how quickly you made assumptions and how you treated those you perceived as beneath you." Alicia blinked, taken aback by his directness. "I don't think I treated anyone as beneath me. You referred to our flight attendant as, these people, who don't understand etiquette. You made derogatory comments about Captain Reynolds and Tasha, implying nepotism rather than earned positions. You questioned why I would receive any special treatment, suggesting I must be an athlete or entertainer because those were the only ways you could imagine a black man in first class receiving recognition." Alicia felt her face burning with shame as he calmly recounted her behavior. "I've been flying commercial my entire life," Elijah continued. "Before I owned this airline, I was a baggage handler here at Denver International, working my way through community college." "You were a baggage handler?" Alicia couldn't hide her surprise. "For 3 years. Then customer service for 2 more. I worked operations while getting my business degree at night. After business school, I founded a small regional cargo airline that eventually became Horizon when we expanded to passenger service." His story stunned her. She had assumed he was from wealth, perhaps an investor who had simply purchased the airline. "I had no idea," she said softly. "Most people don't. They see the suit and the title and assume I was born into it. The truth is, I've loaded luggage into planes in -20-degree weather. I've calmed panicked passengers during emergencies. I've cleaned vomit from seats between flights. I know every aspect of this business because I've lived it." Alicia stood speechless, her carefully constructed worldview crumbling around her. "Ms. Bailey, I don't expect special treatment when I fly. I sit in seat 3A because I want to observe the wing during takeoff and landing. It's a habit from my days in operations. The crew recognizes me because many of them have worked with me for years, not because I demand recognition." The truth of his words hit her like a physical force. All her assumptions about his entitlement, about the preferential treatment, about his background, had been completely wrong. She began, but found she had no adequate response. At that moment, a security officer approached them. "Mr. Washington, is everything all right here?" he asked, eyeing Alicia with suspicion. Elijah smiled reassuringly. "Everything's fine, Officer Reynolds. Ms. Bailey and I were just having a discussion about perspective." Officer Reynolds nodded and stepped back but remained nearby. "Did you call security on me?" Alicia asked incredulously. No, Elijah replied. But your behavior on the flight was reported by several passengers. Standard protocol when a passenger is disruptive. I wasn't disruptive, she protested. I was just expressing concerns about service. Ms. Bailey, you raised your voice multiple times, made racially charged comments, and created an uncomfortable environment for those around you. By any definition, that's disruptive. Seeing that Officer Reynolds was still watching, Alicia lowered her voice. Are you going to have me removed? Elijah considered her for a moment. No. I believe in second chances, Ms. Bailey. Everyone has bad days and makes poor judgments. What matters is how we learn from them. With that, he nodded politely and rejoined his executive team, leaving Alicia to contemplate the full magnitude of her misjudgment and the unexpected grace she had been shown by a man she had so fundamentally underestimated. The Denver International Airport was in a state of controlled chaos. Hundreds of passengers from Flight 2467 crowded the terminal, some anxious about missed connections, others on phones frantically rearranging plans. In the midst of this, Horizon Airline staff moved with remarkable efficiency, directing people to various service points. Alicia followed the crowd toward a large private lounge that had been opened specifically for their flight's passengers. Inside, refreshments were being served, and additional Horizon representatives were handling rebooking and accommodation arrangements. Through the glass walls of the lounge, she could see Elijah surrounded by airline staff. He was reviewing documents, giving directions, and occasionally speaking directly to passengers who approached him. Unlike most executives who might delegate such work during a crisis, he was in the trenches, personally overseeing the response. As Alicia watched, a professionally dressed woman approached her. Ms. Bailey? I'm Jennifer Morris, Customer Experience Director for Horizon. We've arranged your transportation to the Ritz-Carlton, and your luggage will be delivered directly to your room within the hour. Thank you, Alicia replied, surprised by the personalized attention. That's very efficient. Mr. Washington insists on comprehensive care during disruptions, Jennifer explained. Your boarding pass for tomorrow morning's flight has been sent to your email, and we've arranged a car to bring you back to the airport. Is there anything else you need while you're in Denver? Alicia thought about her ruined presentation documents. Actually, yes. I had some important papers damaged during the flight. Is there a business center where I could recreate and print them? Of course. The hotel has a fully equipped business center, but if you prefer, we can have a Horizon representative assist you with that this evening. Many of our executives carry portable printers for situations like this. That won't be necessary, Alicia said quickly, not wanting to take advantage after her earlier behavior. The hotel's facilities should be fine. As Jennifer moved on to assist other passengers, Alicia noticed Elijah again. He was now deep in conversation with Gregory Patterson and a group of men in maintenance uniforms, examining what appeared to be technical diagrams of the aircraft. She tried to approach them but was politely intercepted by a staff member. I'm sorry, ma'am, but Mr. Washington is in an emergency operations meeting right now. Is there something I can help you with? No, I just... Alicia hesitated. I wanted to speak with him again. I understand. Mr. Washington will be addressing all passengers shortly with updates. Reluctantly, Alicia retreated to a seating area where other first-class passengers had gathered. She recognized James Wilson, the board member who had tried to warn her about Elijah's identity. He nodded at her but didn't invite conversation, his earlier friendliness replaced with professional distance. An announcement came over the lounge speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the disruption to your travel plans today. Mr. Elijah Washington, CEO of Horizon Airlines, will be addressing all passengers regarding our next steps. Please gather in the central area of the lounge. The crowd shifted, forming a semicircle around a small platform where Elijah now stood. Despite the crisis, he appeared composed and in command. Good afternoon, he began, his deep voice carrying without a microphone. First, I want to thank you all for your calm and cooperation during our emergency landing. As you know, we experienced a hydraulic system failure that, while not catastrophic, required immediate attention for safety reasons. He proceeded to explain the technical issue in accessible terms, neither oversimplifying nor using excessive jargon. It was clear he understood the mechanics intimately. Our maintenance team estimates repairs will take approximately 8 hours, which means we cannot continue our journey on this aircraft today. However, we have implemented our passenger care protocol, which means each of you will receive confirmed rebooking on tomorrow's flights, hotel accommodations appropriate to your ticket class, meal vouchers, and transportation. A murmur of appreciation ran through the crowd. Most airlines would have issued vouchers and left passengers to fend for themselves, or at best, put premium passengers in hotels while economy class waited standby for future flights. Additionally, Elijah continued, I've arranged for a special chartered flight for those with urgent business in San Francisco. It will depart at 7 p.m. this evening and can accommodate 50 passengers. Priority will be given based on demonstrated urgent need, not ticket class. This announcement sparked immediate conversation. Alicia's ears perked up, her board presentation was certainly urgent business. For those continuing tomorrow, we will have designated check-in counters to expedite your boarding. All of your baggage will be delivered to your hotels within the hour, and returned to the airport tomorrow morning. As Elijah finished his address and stepped down from the platform, he was immediately surrounded by passengers with questions. Alicia attempted to join the group but found herself blocked by the sheer number of people. Instead, she approached Jennifer Morris again. Excuse me, I have an important board presentation tomorrow morning in San Francisco. How do I request a seat on the charter flight? Jennifer checked her tablet. Ms. Bailey, let me see what we can do. What time is your presentation? 10 a.m., Alicia replied. It's a quarterly marketing strategy presentation to our board of directors. Absolutely critical. Jennifer nodded. I'll add you to the priority list. Mr. Patterson is reviewing all requests personally. You'll be notified within the hour if you're confirmed for the charter. Alicia thanked her and retreated to a quieter corner of the lounge. As she waited, she observed the operation unfolding around her. Horizon staff moved with practiced precision, addressing individual passenger needs while maintaining the overall flow of the evacuation process. It was impressive, clearly the result of well-designed protocols and thorough training. An hour later, passengers began receiving notifications about the charter flight. Alicia checked her phone eagerly but found no message. Concerned, she approached the service desk. Excuse me, I haven't received confirmation for the charter flight yet. My name is Alicia Bailey. The agent checked her system. I'm sorry, Ms. Bailey, but your request wasn't approved for the charter. You've been confirmed on tomorrow morning's 9 a.m. flight, which will have you in San Francisco by 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. But my presentation is at 10 a.m., Alicia protested. I explained this to Jennifer Morris. This is completely unacceptable. Let me see if Mr. Patterson can speak with you, the agent offered, sensing Alicia's rising frustration. Minutes later, Gregory Patterson approached her. In person, he was tall and distinguished-looking, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Ms. Bailey, I understand you have concerns about your rebooking, he said professionally. Yes, I specifically requested the charter flight because I have a critical board presentation tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Instead, I've been booked on a flight that won't arrive until after my presentation is supposed to start. Patterson consulted his tablet. I see your request here. Unfortunately, the charter flight priority was determined based on several factors. We had passengers with medical appointments, family emergencies, and time-sensitive legal obligations. Your presentation, while important, wasn't categorized as an urgent priority. Not urgent. This is a quarterly board presentation that could determine the direction of our entire marketing strategy for the next fiscal year. I understand, Patterson replied calmly. However, we had limited seats and had to make difficult decisions. We've arranged for you to have access to video conferencing facilities at the hotel if you'd like to conduct your presentation remotely. This is ridiculous, Alicia said, her voice rising. I'm a Platinum Medallion member, and I paid for first class. Surely that counts for something. Ms. Bailey, Patterson said, his tone cooling slightly. Mr. Washington was very clear that charter priority would be based on urgency of need, not ticket class or status. Those were his explicit instructions. Then I want to speak with him directly, Alicia demanded. Patterson hesitated. Mr. Washington is currently in a meeting with maintenance regarding the repair schedule. I'm authorized to make all passenger arrangements in his absence. I insist on speaking with him, Alicia pressed. This is my career we're talking about. Is there a problem here? Came a familiar voice. Elijah had approached without Alicia noticing. Mr. Washington, she said immediately, there's been a mistake with my rebooking. I explained to your staff that I have a critical board presentation tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in San Francisco, but I've been placed on a flight that won't arrive until after it starts. Elijah turned to Patterson. Greg? We assessed all charter requests according to the criteria you established, Patterson explained. Ms. Bailey's presentation didn't meet the urgency threshold compared to medical appointments and family emergencies. Elijah nodded. That sounds appropriate. But my presentation is for our board of directors, Alicia insisted. Our entire quarterly strategy depends on it. Ms. Bailey, Elijah said calmly, I understand your presentation is important to you and your company. However, we had a passenger who needs to reach his wife's side for emergency surgery, another who has a critical medical treatment scheduled, and several with legal obligations that cannot be postponed. We made the fairest allocations possible with limited resources. I'm willing to pay extra, Alicia offered, her desperation growing. Whatever the cost difference is. This isn't about money, Elijah replied. It's about prioritizing human needs in a crisis situation. Video conferencing is a perfectly viable alternative for a business presentation. Alicia felt her frustration building. I don't understand why my platinum status counts for nothing in this situation. I've been loyal to Horizon for years. And we value that loyalty, Elijah assured her. That's why you've been provided with excellent accommodations, guaranteed rebooking, and transportation. But in emergency situations, human needs take precedence over status. Before Alicia could respond, a young executive approached Elijah with an urgent expression. Mr. Washington, we need you for a moment. There's a situation with the charter aircraft inspection. Excuse me, Elijah said to Alicia before stepping away with the executive. Left standing with Patterson, Alicia tried another angle. Mr. Patterson, surely there's something you can do. My company is one of Horizon's biggest corporate accounts. Patterson's expression changed subtly. Ms. Bailey, what company did you say you work for? Bailey Marketing Group, she replied, slightly embellishing the name of her employer to sound more impressive. We're a premier marketing firm with clients across multiple industries. Patterson tapped something into his tablet, then looked up with an unreadable expression. Bailey Marketing Group. That would be a subsidiary of Integrated Media Partners, correct? Yes, Alicia confirmed, surprised by his knowledge. Interesting, Patterson said. Did you know that Horizon Airlines is actually the majority stakeholder in Integrated Media Partners? Alicia felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. What? That's not possible. We're an independent firm. Until the acquisition last year, Patterson corrected her. Washington Capital Partners, Mr. Washington's investment firm, acquired a controlling interest in IMP and its subsidiaries. The transition has been gradual to maintain operational stability, but legally speaking, you work for a company that Elijah Washington effectively owns. The revelation hit Alicia like a physical blow. Not only had she spent hours antagonizing the CEO of the airline she was flying, but he was essentially her boss's boss. I had no idea, she whispered. Few people do, Patterson replied. Mr. Washington prefers to maintain the existing management structures in his acquisitions rather than announcing his involvement. He believes companies operate best when they maintain their established identity. As this new reality sank in, Alicia spotted Elijah returning from his meeting. He was heading toward the exit with a group of executives, apparently leaving the lounge. "I need to speak with him again," Alicia said urgently. Patterson shook his head. "I wouldn't recommend that right now, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Washington has pressing operational concerns to address. I suggest you take the hotel shuttle that's waiting outside and prepare for your flight tomorrow. The video conferencing equipment will be set up for your use by 8 a.m. With that, Patterson excused himself, leaving Alicia standing alone in the middle of the lounge, the full weight of her situation finally dawning on her. She had not only offended the CEO of her preferred airline but had potentially jeopardized her professional future by antagonizing the man who, unbeknownst to her, controlled her company's fate. The Ritz-Carlton Denver lived up to its reputation for luxury and service. Upon arrival, Alicia was greeted by name and escorted directly to her room, where her luggage had already been delivered as promised. On the desk, she found a package containing vouchers for meals, transportation, and a note confirming her rebooking on tomorrow's 9 a.m. flight. Despite these comforts, Alicia couldn't shake the anxiety that had settled over her. The revelations of the day kept replaying in her mind. Elijah Washington wasn't just the CEO of Horizon Airlines, but also the majority owner of her company's parent corporation. She had spent hours antagonizing a man who could, with a single word, end her career. After a quick shower, she headed to the hotel's restaurant, hoping a good meal might calm her nerves. As she entered the elegantly appointed dining room, she stopped short. Seated at a corner table, reviewing documents while eating alone, was Elijah Washington. For a moment, she considered retreating, but he looked up and their eyes met. After a brief hesitation, he nodded in acknowledgement. Taking a deep breath, Alicia approached his table. "Mr. Washington," she began, "I hope I'm not interrupting your dinner." "Ms. Bailey," he replied evenly. "Not at all. I was just reviewing the maintenance reports." An uncomfortable silence followed. Alicia shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I wanted to apologize again for my behavior today. It was completely inappropriate." Elijah gestured to the chair across from him. "Would you like to join me? I think we could both use a straightforward conversation." Surprised by the invitation, Alicia sat down. A server immediately appeared to take her order, and she requested a glass of wine, desperately needing something to calm her nerves. "Mr. Washington," she began once the server had departed, "I just learned from Mr. Patterson that Horizon is the majority stakeholder in my company's parent corporation. I had no idea." "The acquisition was completed 9 months ago," Elijah confirmed. "We've maintained the existing management structure to ensure continuity." "If I had known." "Would it have changed how you treated me on the flight?" he interrupted, his gaze direct but not unkind. Alicia opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. The truth was uncomfortable. "Probably," she admitted finally. "But that's part of the problem, isn't it?" Elijah nodded slightly, acknowledging her moment of self-awareness. "Ms. Bailey, I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone is offering an apology because they've been caught, not because they're genuinely sorry." Her wine arrived, and Alicia took a larger sip than she intended. "That's fair," she said. "But I am genuinely sorry now. Not just because of who you are or what it might mean for my career, but because I've had time to reflect on my behavior." "Tell me about this reflection," Elijah said, pushing his plate aside to give her his full attention. Alicia took another sip of wine. "When I first sat down next to you on the plane, I made immediate assumptions. I saw a black man in my preferred seat, and I automatically assumed you were in the wrong place. And when you discovered I wasn't, I was annoyed. I couldn't understand why you were receiving what I perceived as special treatment. I assumed it must be because you were famous in some way, an athlete or entertainer, because those were the only explanations that made sense to me for why a black man would be treated with such deference. Elijah's expression remained neutral. Go on. When I discovered you were the CEO, I was shocked. That didn't fit my mental model at all. And then when Mr. Patterson told me you started as a baggage handler and worked your way up, that challenged my assumptions even further. What assumptions were those? Elijah asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Alicia hesitated, uncomfortable with articulating her biases. That successful executives, especially in industries like aviation, came from certain backgrounds. Ivy League schools, family connections, inherited wealth. Not from loading baggage in sub-zero temperatures. No, she admitted. Not from there. Elijah nodded slowly. Ms. Bailey, I encounter situations like today's flight regularly. People make assumptions about me based on my appearance rather than my abilities or position. It happens in first-class cabins, in boardrooms, even in my own neighborhood. Oakwood Heights, Alicia said, remembering their earlier conversation. Yes. Where my parents still live in the house I grew up in, watching as their community transforms around them, not always for the better. Alicia thought about her neighborhood association meetings, the discussions about improving the area, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways they had pushed out longtime residents and businesses. She had never considered how these changes might be perceived by those who had built their lives their generations before she arrived. I've experienced this kind of treatment throughout my career, Elijah continued. When I started Horizon, I couldn't get meetings with investors. When I did, they spoke to my white deputy CFO instead of me, assuming he was in charge. When I fly my own airline, flight attendants who don't know me sometimes try to direct me to economy even when I have a first-class boarding pass. His calm recounting of these experiences made them all the more powerful. There was no self-pity in his tone, just a matter-of-fact description of his reality. I don't know what to say, Alicia admitted. You don't need to say anything. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you so you understand that what happened today wasn't an isolated incident for me or for many others. It's a pattern we navigate constantly. Alicia nodded, taking in his words. Can I ask you something? She said after a moment. Why did you intervene with that security officer at the airport? You could have let him remove me after how I behaved. Elijah considered her question. Do you remember when I told you I worked as a baggage handler? Yes. During those years, I observed how airlines treated passengers during disruptions. The big carriers were quick to categorize upset customers as disruptive and have them removed, especially when those customers were people of color. When I founded Horizon, I established a different approach. We differentiate between passengers who are genuinely threatening safety and those who are simply having a bad day or reacting to stress. And you thought I was just having a bad day? Alicia asked. I thought you were operating from a place of unexamined bias rather than malice, Elijah clarified. There's a difference between someone who needs education and someone who needs removal. The honesty of his assessment was both uncomfortable and refreshingly direct. Alicia took another sip of her wine, letting his words sink in. Throughout my career, Elijah continued, I've had two options when confronted with bias. I could call it out directly and be labeled angry or difficult, or I could remain silent and endure it. Neither approach creates change. So I've developed a third option. Which is, I use these encounters as opportunities for education. Not by lecturing or shaming, but by allowing people to come face to face with their own assumptions in ways they can't easily dismiss. Alicia thought about how the revelation of his identity had forced her to confront her biases more effectively than any diversity training session she'd attended. I could have had you removed from the flight, Elijah acknowledged. I could have you fired tomorrow. But what would that accomplish? You'd feel victimized rather than enlightened, and nothing would change. So this conversation is part of my education? Alicia asked, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. This conversation is happening because you approached my table, Elijah reminded her with a slight smile. I'm simply being honest with you. Alicia nodded, acknowledging the truth in his statement. Well, I'm listening. And I'm learning. Good, Elijah said. That's all anyone can ask for. As they continued their conversation, Alicia found herself genuinely engaged in hearing about Elijah's journey, how he had worked night shifts loading baggage while taking community college classes during the day, how he had earned scholarships to business school, how he had identified inefficiencies in the regional airline industry that larger carriers had overlooked. For the first time, she was listening not to curry favor or protect her job, but because she was genuinely interested in understanding a perspective different from her own. And in that understanding, she began to recognize the patterns of assumption and privilege that had shaped her interactions not just with Elijah, but with countless others throughout her life. As their dinner concluded, Elijah checked his watch. I should get back to the operations center. The maintenance team will be finishing their work soon, and I need to review their reports before authorizing the aircraft's return to service. Of course, Alicia said. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. As they both stood, Elijah extended his hand. Your flight tomorrow will get you to San Francisco by 11:30. The hotel has arranged for the video conferencing to be ready by 8 a.m. if you need it for your presentation. Alicia shook his hand. Thank you. For everything. As she watched him leave the restaurant, Alicia realized that despite the humiliation and anxiety of the day, she had been given a rare opportunity, not just a second chance professionally, but a chance to recognize and begin addressing biases she hadn't even acknowledged she held. With that realization came an unexpected sense of gratitude toward the man she had so severely misjudged. The next morning dawned clear and cold in Denver. Alicia woke early, determined to prepare for her board presentation despite the circumstances. The hotel had set up the promised video conferencing equipment in a private meeting room, allowing her to connect with her team in San Francisco to review last-minute details. They won't expect you to be there in person, given the flight situation, her assistant assured her over the video call. Mr. Daniels already announced you'd be presenting remotely due to a mechanical issue with your flight. I appreciate that, Alicia replied, reviewing her slides one final time. I'll sign on at 9:45 a.m. Pacific for the 10 a.m. start. With her presentation prepared and her professional concerns temporarily addressed, Alicia headed downstairs to catch the shuttle to the airport. The lobby was filled with passengers from yesterday's flight, all making their way back to Denver International for their rebooked departures. Outside, a fleet of luxury coaches waited to transport them. Alicia boarded the first available bus, finding it comfortably appointed with leather seats and refreshments. As they departed for the airport, she noticed other displaced passengers commenting on the exceptional handling of the disruption. I've never seen an airline respond like this, remarked an elderly gentleman seated across from her. Usually they give you a voucher and leave you to figure it out yourself. Horizon has always been different, replied his companion. That's why we fly with them whenever possible. Their corporate culture is truly passenger-focused. Alicia listened to these conversations with new interest. Before yesterday, she would have considered herself a discerning traveler with high standards. Now she recognized that her standards had often been entitlement, her discernment merely a reflection of status anxiety. Arriving at Denver International, passengers were directed to dedicated check-in counters where Horizon staff efficiently processed their rebooked flights. Alicia approached the first-class counter, presenting her ID and boarding pass. Good morning, Ms. Bailey, said the agent, a young black woman whose name tag read Jasmine, the same gate agent from Atlanta who had checked her in yesterday. We have you confirmed on Flight 859 to San Francisco, departing at 9 a.m. from Gate B23. Your seat assignment is 4B. Not first class. Alicia asked before she could stop herself. Jasmine checked her screen. I'm sorry, Ms. Bailey. It appears your reservation was modified last night. You've been reassigned to Economy Plus. There must be some mistake, Alicia said, feeling her chest tighten. I was booked in first class on the original flight. Let me double-check, Jasmine said, typing something into her computer. Yes, I see the change was made at 11:42 p.m. last night. The note indicates it was an executive override. Executive override? What does that mean? It means the change was authorized at the executive level, Jasmine explained carefully. I don't have the authority to reverse it. Alicia felt a flush of embarrassment mixed with indignation. I need to speak with a manager immediately. Of course, Jasmine replied professionally. Mr. Patterson is supervising the rebooking process this morning. I'll page him for you. As Jasmine made the call, Alicia stood fuming at the counter. All around her, other passengers were being processed efficiently, many expressing gratitude for Horizon's handling of the disruption. The contrast between their experience and hers was not lost on her. Gregory Patterson appeared a few minutes later, tablet in hand. Good morning, Ms. Bailey. I understand there's an issue with your reservation. Yes, there certainly is, Alicia said, struggling to keep her voice even. I was booked in first class on yesterday's flight, but somehow I've been downgraded to Economy Plus for today's flight. This is completely unacceptable. Patterson checked his tablet. I see the change in the system. It was authorized by Mr. Washington himself. By Mr. Washington? Alicia repeated, stunned. After their conversation last night, she had believed they had reached an understanding. Why would he do that? I can't speak to his specific reasoning, Patterson replied carefully. But I can tell you that these decisions are never made arbitrarily. This is discrimination, Alicia said, lowering her voice but unable to hide her anger. I'm going to file a formal complaint. My company has a substantial business relationship with Horizon. Patterson's expression shifted slightly at the mention of her company. Ms. Bailey, perhaps we should discuss this in private. He led her to a small meeting room adjacent to the check-in area. Once inside, he closed the door and turned to face her. Ms. Bailey, I understand your frustration, but I think there are some factors you should be aware of before you proceed with a formal complaint. What factors? She demanded. As I mentioned yesterday, Horizon, or more specifically, Washington Capital Partners, is the majority stakeholder in Integrated Media Partners, your parent company. Yes, I'm aware of that now, Alicia said impatiently. What you may not be aware of is that the board meeting you're presenting at today isn't just about quarterly marketing strategies. Patterson paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. The board is meeting to discuss a complete acquisition of Bailey Marketing Group by Horizon's parent company. Alicia felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. Complete acquisition? What does that mean? It means your presentation today is essentially an audition, Patterson explained. The board is evaluating whether to maintain Bailey Marketing as a separate entity or fold its operations into Horizon's existing marketing department. The implications hit Alicia all at once. Her job, her team, her entire professional identity were potentially on the line, and she had spent yesterday antagonizing the man who would ultimately make that decision. Why wasn't I informed of this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Merger and acquisition discussions are typically confidential until final decisions are made, Patterson said. Only top management and board members would have been aware. Alicia sat down heavily in the nearest chair, trying to process this new information. So my seat reassignment was likely Mr. Washington giving you an opportunity to experience Horizon from a different perspective, Patterson finished for her. He believes executives should understand every aspect of the customer experience, not just the premium services. So this is some kind of test? Alicia asked incredulously. I would characterize it as an opportunity for growth, Patterson replied diplomatically. Mr. Washington often says that true leadership requires empathy, and empathy requires experience. Before Alicia could respond, the door opened and Elijah Washington himself entered the room. He was dressed in the same impeccable suit from yesterday, showing no signs of the long night he had presumably spent overseeing the aircraft repairs. Good morning, Ms. Bailey. Greg, could you give us a moment? Elijah requested. Patterson nodded and exited, leaving Alicia alone with the CEO. Mr. Washington, she began, unsure whether to express confusion, outrage, or contrition. I understand you have questions about your seat reassignment, Elijah said, taking the chair across from her. Mr. Patterson just informed me about the acquisition discussions, Alicia replied. Is this your way of punishing me for yesterday? Elijah shook his head. This isn't punishment, Ms. Bailey. It's an opportunity. An opportunity to be humiliated, she asked. An opportunity to experience what the majority of our passengers experience, he corrected her. You spoke yesterday about being a Platinum Medallion member, about your expectations of preferential treatment. But over 80% of our revenue comes from economy passengers who never set foot in first class. Alicia listened, beginning to understand. At Horizon, we believe leadership requires understanding the experiences of all our customers, not just the premium segment, Elijah continued. When I promote executives, I look for those who can empathize with every level of service we provide. So this is about the acquisition, Alicia concluded. You're evaluating whether I'm suitable for leadership in the combined company. Partly, Elijah acknowledged. But it's also about giving you a chance to demonstrate growth after our conversation last night. You said you were learning. This is a practical application of that learning. Alicia considered his words carefully. Her initial instinct was to protest, to demand her first-class seat as a matter of principle. But she recognized that this reaction would only confirm Elijah's assessment of her character. I have a choice for you, Elijah said. You can take the Economy Plus seat, experience our service from that perspective, and use it as an opportunity to broaden your understanding. Or I can have Jasmine issue you a full refund, and you can book a flight on another carrier. The choice was clear when framed that way. A refund would mean missing her presentation entirely, effectively surrendering any chance of maintaining her position after the acquisition. I'll take the Economy Plus seat, Alicia said finally. Elijah nodded, a hint of approval in his expression. I think that's a wise choice. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing, Ms. Bailey. The board meeting today isn't just about marketing strategies or even the acquisition. It's about the kind of company we want to build going forward, one that values all customers equally, regardless of the price of their ticket or the color of their skin. With that, he left the room, leaving Alicia to contemplate the full implications of his words. As she made her way to the gate, boarding pass in hand, Alicia found herself observing the airport through new eyes. She noticed the diverse passengers around her, the Horizon staff who greeted everyone with the same level of respect, the small touches that enhanced the travel experience for all customers, not just those in premium cabins. By the time she boarded the aircraft and found her Economy Plus seat, Alicia had begun to understand what Elijah Washington had been trying to show her. It wasn't just about airline seats or corporate acquisitions. It was about recognizing the humanity in everyone, regardless of status or appearance. As the plane took off toward San Francisco, Alicia opened her laptop and began revising her presentation. The marketing strategy she had prepared suddenly seemed shallow and status-focused. If she was going to have any chance of surviving the acquisition, she needed to demonstrate that she understood Horizon's values she was only now beginning to truly comprehend. 6 months later, the expansive ballroom of the Horizon Airlines headquarters in Atlanta was transformed for the company's annual holiday celebration. Twinkling lights hung from the ceiling, creating a starry effect above the hundreds of employees gathered to celebrate another successful year. Alicia Bailey stood near the refreshment table, engaged in conversation with several colleagues from the newly formed Community Engagement and Inclusion Department. Her position was different now, no longer the high-powered marketing executive she had been, but something she had come to value more. The response to the Neighborhood Business Initiative has been incredible, said Tasha Reynolds, who had transferred from flight operations to join Alicia's team. 10 local shops in Oakwood Heights have received support, and we've helped prevent 3 long-standing businesses from closing. That's what this work is all about, Alicia replied, genuine enthusiasm in her voice. Ensuring that progress doesn't come at the expense of community. The journey to this moment had been challenging. After her flight to San Francisco 6 months ago, Alicia had indeed presented to the board, not just the marketing strategy she had prepared, but a revised approach that incorporated what she had learned from her experience with Elijah Washington. She had spoken candidly about her awakening, proposing a new marketing direction that would focus on community integration rather than status-based exclusivity. To her surprise, the board had been receptive, particularly when Elijah himself had voiced support for her ideas. The acquisition had proceeded, but instead of being terminated or sidelined, Alicia had been offered a new role, leading a department focused on community engagement and inclusion initiatives for the combined company. Her first project had been in Oakwood Heights, working with longtime residents and business owners to ensure they benefited from the neighborhood's changing dynamics rather than being displaced by them. The initiative had involved everything from rent stabilization programs for local businesses to community-led development planning. "Remember that soul food restaurant on Maple Street?" asked Devin Parker, who had also joined her team after years as a flight attendant. "The owner told me yesterday that their business has increased 30% since we featured them in the employee dining program." "Mrs. Washington's cooking deserves to be celebrated," Alicia replied with a smile, referring to Elijah's mother, whose restaurant had been a neighborhood institution for decades. The irony wasn't lost on her. 6 months ago, she had been campaigning to have the restaurant's business license restricted due to parking concerns. Now, she was one of its most vocal advocates. A hush fell over the room as Elijah Washington took the small stage at the front of the ballroom. As always, he carried himself with quiet confidence, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. "Good evening, Horizon family," he began, his deep voice carrying throughout the space. "What a year it has been. Despite industry challenges, market volatility, and more than a few storms both literal and figurative, we've emerged stronger than ever." He proceeded to highlight the company's achievements, record customer satisfaction scores, expanded routes, innovative service improvements, and significant community initiatives. Alicia listened with pride, particularly when he mentioned the neighborhood business preservation program she had spearheaded. After his address, as employees mingled and celebrated, Elijah made his way through the crowd, greeting people personally. When he reached Alicia's group, everyone straightened slightly, showing the natural respect his presence commanded. "Ms. Bailey," he said with a warm smile, "I've been hearing excellent reports about your team's work." "Thank you, Mr. Washington," Alicia replied. "We've had incredible support from leadership, which makes all the difference. I was particularly impressed with your presentation to the Atlanta City Council last week," he continued. "Your advocacy for inclusive urban development was compelling." "I've had good teachers," she said meaningfully. Their colleagues discreetly moved away, giving them a moment of privacy in the crowded room. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be leading community engagement initiatives instead of high-profile marketing campaigns, I would have considered it a demotion, Alicia admitted. "Now I can't imagine doing anything else." "Growth rarely occurs within our comfort zones," Elijah observed. "Sometimes the most valuable career moves aren't the ones that take us higher, but the ones that expand our perspective." "I owe you an apology," Alicia said, the words she had wanted to express for months finally finding voice. "Not the performative one I gave on the plane or at the hotel, but a real one. I made assumptions about you based solely on appearance. I behaved as if my status entitled me to preferential treatment. I was exactly the kind of person I would have denied being." Elijah listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. "Why did you give me a second chance?" she asked. "You could have fired me after the acquisition. Most CEOs would have." "I don't believe in discarding people who show potential for growth," he replied. "When you accepted the economy seat in Denver, you demonstrated something important, the capacity to choose learning over entitlement. That's rare, especially in people who have grown accustomed to privilege." "Still, it was a risk," Alicia pointed out. "I could have reverted to old patterns once the crisis passed." "True leadership involves calculated risks," Elijah said. "Besides, you're not the first person I've given this particular opportunity to." "You mean there have been others?" Alicia asked, surprised. "Several over the years," he confirmed. "Some responded as you did, recognizing the opportunity for growth. Others doubled down on their entitlement and are no longer with the company. These encounters aren't random, they're how I identify who has the potential to help build the kind of organization we aspire to be. Before Alicia could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of an elderly black man in a maintenance uniform. He was using a cane and moving slowly through the crowd. "Mr. Harold," Elijah said warmly, extending his hand. "I'm so glad you could join us tonight." "Wouldn't miss it, Mr. Washington," the man replied. 35 years with this airline, retirement won't keep me from the holiday party. "Ms. Bailey, have you met Harold Jenkins? He was head of ground maintenance when I started as a baggage handler. Taught me everything I know about aircraft operations." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Jenkins," Alicia said sincerely. "Harold was looking for a place to sit down," Elijah explained. "The tables are filling up quickly." Alicia glanced around and noticed that indeed, most of the tables were now occupied. Without hesitation, she pulled out her chair at a nearby table where she had placed her purse to reserve her seat. "Please, Mr. Jenkins, take my seat," she offered. "I'll find another place." "That's very kind of you, young lady," Harold said gratefully, easing himself into the chair. As Alicia stepped away to find another spot, she caught Elijah watching her with a subtle nod of recognition. In that moment, she understood that this small gesture, giving up her seat to someone who needed it more, represented exactly the transformation he had hoped to see in her. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Alicia found herself helping to collect donated gifts for the company's annual children's charity drive. As she packed toys into boxes alongside colleagues from various departments, she reflected on how profoundly her perspective had changed in just 6 months. The woman who had boarded Flight 2467 that day in Atlanta, entitled, status conscious, quick to judge, seemed like a stranger to her now. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of humbling self-recognition, uncomfortable conversations, and the pain that inevitably accompanies genuine growth. But as she looked around at her new colleagues, diverse in background, position, and perspective, yet united in purpose, Alicia knew she had found something more valuable than the corner office or first-class seat she had once prized so highly. She had found authentic connection, meaningful work, and the opportunity to create positive change, not despite giving up her previous status, but because of it. As she left the building that night, Alicia passed Elijah in the lobby. No words were necessary, just a simple nod of mutual respect between two people who understood that true transformation begins not with external circumstances, but with the willingness to see beyond one's own limited perspective. This story reminds us that biases often operate beneath our conscious awareness until confronted directly. Alicia's journey from entitlement to enlightenment demonstrates how deeply ingrained prejudice can be, even in those who consider themselves progressive. The airplane became a microcosm of society where status, race, and power intersected in revealing ways. True growth begins with uncomfortable self-reflection. When Elijah could have exercised his power to punish Alicia, he instead chose education, recognizing that sustainable change comes through understanding, not humiliation. His approach shows that addressing discrimination requires both accountability and opportunity for growth. The story also highlights how environments can reinforce or challenge our biases. The airline's hierarchy initially validated Alicia's sense of entitlement, but Elijah's leadership created a space where different perspectives could be valued equally. Perhaps most importantly, the narrative reminds us that transformation is possible but rarely convenient. Alicia's journey required her to relinquish privilege and status, a painful process that ultimately led to more meaningful connections and purpose. Real change demands more than intellectual acknowledgement, it requires action and sacrifice. What biases might be operating in your own life, waiting to be challenged? Have you ever experienced a moment of clarity that changed your perspective on privilege or discrimination? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others reflect on their own blind spots. Remember, growth happens at the edge of discomfort, and sometimes the most profound lessons come from our most humbling experiences. Thank you for watching, and may we all have the courage to face our biases with honesty and humility.